She convinced the world she could run 200 blood tests from a single finger prick. Investors threw $700 million at her. The machine didn't work, not even close. This is how a 19-year-old Stanford dropout built a $9 billion lie. December 2003. A 19-year-old stands in front of a mirror, rehearsing a pitch like her life depends on it. "We're going to revolutionize healthcare." Elizabeth Holmes had just dropped out of Stanford with a vision: change medicine forever. As a kid, she worshipped Thomas Edison. In college, she pitched her professor on a drug delivery patch. He shot it down instantly. This makes no scientific sense. But what if I told you it was revolutionary? Still no. So she dropped out and started her own company anyway, because if you can't pass chemistry, obviously the next step is revolutionizing all of medicine. She called it Theranos, mixing therapy and diagnosis. The pitch was simple: test for cancer, diabetes, STDs, and dozens of other conditions with just a finger prick. No needles, no vials, no waiting. Silicon Valley ate it up. But here's the thing, she never explained how it would work. Could you tell us how the machine works? Science. What kind of science? Advanced science. Can you be more specific? Revolutionary advanced science. In Silicon Valley, explaining how things work is optional. The money started pouring in. Holmes assembled a board that looked like a shadow government. Former Secretaries of State George Shultz and Henry Kissinger, four-star generals like James Mattis. These weren't tech guys. They were power brokers who couldn't tell a USB port from a cup holder. They didn't understand the science, but they understood influence. And Holmes spoke their language fluently, not with data, but with grand visions and really good PowerPoint slides. By 2013, Forbes crowned her the world's youngest self-made female billionaire. She gave TED Talks, graced magazine covers, name-dropped Steve Jobs without irony. Media mogul Rupert Murdoch invested. So did the Walton family and Oracle's Ari Ellison. Theranos raised over $700 million. On paper, it was worth $9 billion. Walgreens and Safeway were planning to put Theranos machines in their stores. The company hadn't even launched publicly yet. It's like selling tickets to a movie that hasn't been filmed, starring actors who don't exist, based on a script written in crayon. Holmes had pulled off something remarkable. She'd sold the world on a dream before anyone had to see if it actually worked. Spoiler alert, it didn't. Step inside Theranos headquarters and you'd see everything you'd expect. Glass walls, biometric scanners, that sleek minimalist vibe that screamed, "We're changing the world," while whispering, "We have no idea what we're doing." Behind those locked doors sat the company's crown jewel, a machine called the Edison. It was supposed to run over 200 blood tests from a single drop. Except it could barely handle a dozen, sometimes just one. And even then, the results were wildly unreliable. One engineer later joked that the most predictable thing about the machine was how unpredictably it would fail. But Theranos had painted themselves into a corner. The world already believed. Investors were writing massive checks. Walgreens was planning a nationwide rollout. So they did what any desperate company would do. They faked it. When investors came for demos, it was pure theater. The Edison would be polished to perfection, staff rehearsed like actors. The results they handed over? They weren't from the machine. They were from conventional lab equipment hidden in the back. Real blood, fake demo. Meanwhile, engineers were losing their minds, redesigning parts only to watch their work get shelved. People whispered in stairwells, paranoid about being overheard. One former employee said it felt like working in North Korea, but with better snacks. The deception went deeper. Theranos ran two separate labs, one clean and audit-ready for regulators, and one where the chaos lived. Bad data, failed tests, numbers that got massaged until they looked acceptable. When results came back wrong, which happened constantly, they just reran tests until they got something that seemed right. Lab directors who spoke up were told they weren't team players. One seasoned pathologist tried to sound the alarm about safety issues. He was pushed out. Weeks later, he died by suicide. And the patients? They were getting results that made no sense. A woman was told twice she was HIV positive, false alarms that turned her life upside down. Another got a bogus cancer scare, phantom pregnancies, fake blood infections. Inside Theranos, these were called anomalies. Outside, they were people's lives getting derailed. The silence wasn't accidental. Every floor had security checkpoints, NDAs thicker than medical textbooks. Departments couldn't talk to each other by design. Nobody had the full picture except Elizabeth Holmes. And standing right behind her was Sunny Balvani, the company's COO and Holmes's secret boyfriend. He had zero background in medicine but ruled through fear, screaming in meetings, threatening lawsuits. His favorite line, "If you don't believe in this company, you should leave." A lot of people did. The machine was failing, the labs were lying, the team was falling apart. But the public? Still completely enchanted. Every lie eventually meets its truth. It started with whispered phone calls between former employees who couldn't shake what they'd seen. Then two names emerged, Tyler Schultz and Erica Chung. Both joined Theranos to change the world. Both saw enough to realize the dream was built on lies. Chung noticed test results were all over the place, wild inconsistencies that would get any legitimate lab shut down. She raised concerns. Her emails got ignored, her badge access got revoked. Schultz was the grandson of George Schultz, the former Secretary of State on Theranos' board. Tyler saw fake demos, manipulated data, obsessive secrecy. He tried to warn his grandfather. "Grandpa, Theranos is lying about everything." "Tyler, Elizabeth is a visionary. The machine doesn't work. Sometimes visions take time. People are getting wrong medical results. Innovation is messy." When Tyler spoke up externally, Theranos went nuclear. Legal threats, surveillance, private investigators following whistleblowers. They watched Holmes, tapped phones, threatened Tyler with lawsuits that would have bankrupted him, all before his 25th birthday. But the truth was already out there, in the hands of Wall Street Journal reporter John Carreyrou. Carreyrou started digging, meeting sources in parking garages, verifying documents. When Holmes and Balvani caught wind, they panicked. Lawyers, threats, legal notices to employees they suspected of talking. Carreyrou kept pushing. October 2015, the Wall Street Journal published the exposé that shattered the illusion. Theranos wasn't using its own technology for most tests. The Edison couldn't deliver. Results were dangerously inaccurate. Patient safety was at risk. The myth of Elizabeth Holmes was officially dead. Holmes went into damage control. She denied everything, called Carreyrou a misogynist with an agenda, went on CNBC. "This is what happens when you work to change things. First they think you're crazy, then they fight you, then you change the world." But behind the scenes, panic was spreading. Walgreens froze their partnership. Safeway, which had spent over $350 million preparing, pulled out completely. Doctors stopped trusting results. Patients came forward with horror stories. Then the regulators showed up. In 2016, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services inspected Theranos. Complete disaster. Failed to meet basic lab standards, results reliable, quality control practically non-existent. The punishment was swift. Theranos was banned from operating blood testing labs. Holmes was stripped of her license for 2 years. The company was ordered to void 2 years of blood tests, admitting thousands of medical decisions had been made using garbage data. Holmes doubled down, insisting the technology still worked, but the house was already burning. By 2018, the magazine covers were gone, the TED Talks were over. In their place, formal charges from the SEC. Holmes and Balvani were accused of massive fraud, deliberately misleading investors while patients received false results. Holmes cut a deal with the SEC, stepped down, paid a $500,000 fine, accepted a 10-year ban from running any public company. Then, the Department of Justice filed criminal charges, wire fraud, conspiracy, crimes carrying up to 20 years in prison each. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about freedom. The trial was delayed by the pandemic, then by Holmes's pregnancy. When it finally began in late 2021, it felt like Silicon Valley itself was on trial. The prosecution laid out years of deception. Former employees testified about being silenced. Investors described pitches that were pure fiction. Lab reports showed evidence of forgery. Then Holmes took the stand, something her lawyers probably wished she hadn't done. For 7 days, she tried to rewrite the narrative, said she believed in the mission, never meant to mislead. Then she made it personal, accusing Sunny Balvani of abuse and control. "Sunny controlled every aspect of my life. Including your decision to defraud investors? Well, yes. Including your fake deep voice? That was all natural. Ma'am, we have recordings." January 2022, the jury delivered their verdict. guilty on 4 counts of defrauding investors. Bovani's trial followed. He didn't testify. The evidence spoke for itself. Guilty on all 12 counts, sentenced to nearly 13 years in prison. Holmes got 11. By then, Theranos was long dead. The company dissolved in 2018, labs shuttered, machines scrapped. Investors lost hundreds of millions of dollars. Patients were left with confusion and, in some cases, trauma. Elizabeth Holmes promised to revolutionize medicine with a single drop of blood. What she actually delivered was broken trust, false hope, and one of the biggest scandals in Silicon Valley history. Holmes didn't start out trying to con the world. She believed her own hype, and for a while so did everyone else. But in the end, extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and Theranos never had any.